You have questions? We have answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box with your host, Miss Lindsay Schiss.
Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box. We are here to answer your questions, so ask away. Today I have with me Whitney Evans. Whitney, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lindsay. It's good to be here.
Appreciate you being here. I am looking forward to this question, and I feel like it's one a lot of our listeners will resonate with. And it's interesting, when we started this podcast, we talked about what we wanted to do and how we were going to, what the name was going to be. And we decided to name it the Therapist Question Box. And part of it, we put just asking for a friend. And we didn't end up using that whole title, but we wanted it to be safe, to say, the whole adage, like, it's not me, I'm just asking for a friend, right? And this question actually came from somebody who said, I'm actually asking for my friend, right? This is my friend who's going through this, and I'm asking on her behalf. So I thought that was really tender, that this is something that she has seen her friend go through and wanted some insight around it. So I'll go ahead and launch into it. The question is, my friend's son is engaged to a girl that as hard as she tries, she really can't stomach. She's trying to be positive and get over it, but as I'm sure you know, there are so many hopes and dreams tied into that for my friend that she can't see a way past it. So this question hits deep. I think, it's more than a tough personality match. I think there's a lot of layers here. And so when you hear that, what do you see as, what do you hear going on? Just kind of your knee jerk, what do you hear going on in this question?
As soon as you ask that question, what I hear, probably one of the deeper layers, is a lot of grief. She's talking about the hopes and the dreams that she had for her son, or has for her son. And when that doesn't match up with reality, that's a place of loss.
Yes.
That's a feeling of grief. And I wonder if that's what this mom is experiencing and feeling, are layers of grief.
Grief. That's I think that makes so much sense, that this is a grieving mother, right? And sometimes I think there are expectations or dreams that we don't even know are there until they're not realized. And then when it's in our face, it's like, wait a minute, I had a different plan in mind. This was not what I thought.
This was not the plan.
Yes. And so maybe it's less about, the fiancé, less about, but maybe more about this mother and her pain.
Yeah.
So what would you say? I mean, I can see the tenderness in your face, right? As a mother of adult children, right? I'm sure there is experiences where you say, wow, I had a dream. I had a plan in my mind for what would happen for this child, what wouldn't happen, what would happen. What would you tell this grieving mother?
The first thing that I would say is that she's not alone. I would just want to sit with and put my arm around that grief and maybe hear more about that. Tell me more. What did you want? What did you have in mind? How did you see life unfolding for your son?
Yes. You know what I hear too? That this is, again, it's not about the new in-law. This is about her pain and acknowledging her pain, right? So you would just take time with that.
Yeah.
Say, what dream is not being realized?
Yeah.
And I wonder if she would even know that, right?
Right? I wonder if that would be a surprise to her.
Right.
If I asked that question. I wonder if she already knows that.
Right. So, as you think about that, what kind of losses do you think could be at play?
Before we get there, would it be okay to address, I think, what we were just talking about there? Oftentimes, particularly as mothers, when we're experiencing those kinds of feelings that are really deep and maybe covered up by some layers, we don't always recognize it, because that is deep pain. And we find parts of us that do a job maybe of covering that up, or turning our attention away from the pain and making it about the new potential daughter-in-law and what it is about her that rubs her the wrong way, or and I would want to validate that as well, if that was a surprise to that mom, or if she was resistant to that idea that there was grief here.
So do you think that this is not about the daughter-in-law at all? Like let's just say, could it be both? Could it be?
For sure.
There's a difficulty
For
in
sure.
this, right?
For sure. And that's okay to acknowledge.
Yes.
There does sound like there's some difficulty that she can't stomach, that is hard for her, that's poking maybe raw spots inside of this mom. That's a very real thing. Those things can both coexist.
Two things can be true.
Absolutely.
Can be her pain, and there can be difficulty with this new in-law.
Yeah, one doesn't cancel out the other.
Exactly. And I think sometimes we try to do that. Like it's all about the daughter-in-law or it's all about my pain. The truth is it's probably both.
Yeah.
And to be able to acknowledge that, right?
Absolutely.
You know, and I also think there is this place where as mothers, we just we do so much to protect our children. And so when we feel like there is a threat to them or to us or this family unit, boy, it sends signals.
You
like
bet.
Smoke signals, like Mayday, something's not okay, right?
Yeah.
And yet trying to support this child in their decision.
Yeah.
I mean, this feels like some of the most complex work of a mother's heart.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the losses. When we have children and they're young, that's all we have is our children, our nuclear family. And we develop a family culture, a family feeling, traditions, consistency with how we see a family working. And what happens when in-laws are introduced into the picture, things start to change. And that is a loss of a dream. I think as young moms, we believe somewhere that things will always be this way and that we need things to always be this way. And so when things do start to change, that's a loss and it's something to be grieved.
Yes, I think it's so interesting you talk about that because when my daughter left on her mission, I was so happy for her. And I had deep grief. And I knew it wasn't about her being gone, but I couldn't quite figure out until I did some work around it what it was. And I think it was the loss of that dream. Like that nuclear family was no longer, and that had been what I had worked for and lived for. And like that had been my world. And so the idea of that dream coming to an end felt like such a profound loss. I couldn't even, it was shocking to me how upsetting it was. And I remember thinking, no, this is great. She's doing something great and I'm happy for her. And I couldn't quite reconcile the pain that was associated with it. And then when I did some work around it, I got really clear, like it's the loss of a dream. And when you said that, I thought that was interesting because I think sometimes as young mothers, you're just like, oh, this is how it's always going to be. You're just in the throes of young motherhood. Yeah. And you don't really anticipate that your family won't be this way forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
And we couldn't possibly conceptualize that.
Right.
Because we don't know what things are going to look like until they happen. Life is full of uncertainty. And trying to get certain about what the future is going to look like usually doesn't align with reality.
Absolutely. You know, and so for this mother, as I'm thinking about it, I just think it's the loss of a dream. It's the loss of maybe some safety for her, maybe some control. You know, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, certainly.
Yeah.
That it is also something that we're losing. We are letting go, in essence, surrendering the control. That really, as young moms, we had a lot of control. We really could choose quite a bit about what our family looked like, how things operated in our home. And as our children get older, we do lose control. It's important, however, because that is one truth. There are 4 truths that I keep in mind about parenting adult children. And that is the number one truth, that we cannot choose for and we cannot control our adult children.
I would love to hear your other three. So we cannot choose for or control our adult children.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the others?
We cannot rely on our children for our own happiness and our own well-being.
Oh gosh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think we even knowingly do that sometimes, but I think it happens. Like, oh, that's who I am. I'm a mother, and their success means I'm successful.
Yes.
Right? So we often put that burden on them where it's not theirs.
It's not theirs.
Yes.
And it can be damaging to put that burden on them.
Yes.
Ultimately, we are always their mother. They are always our child. And it does change as they get older. The relationship can become more like peers. And at the end of the day, we are always the mother and they are always the child. And it's not their job to take care of us.
Oh, so true. And even as that relationship dynamic shifts, right? Like they become more peers, but it's still, it's not the same. We are still ultimately
the power
parents.
differential remains
Always.
even as we age.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a good reminder.
Yeah.
What else? What are the other two?
Our empty feelings are not to be filled by our children. Again, and that's really closely related to number 2, I believe, but I like to keep those separated. Our empty feelings, those are ours to fill.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. We're responsible.
Yes.
Right? If we're not okay, that's us.
That's up to us.
It's up to us.
To figure out how to get okay. I think that we grew up, and probably our mothers grew up and our grandmothers grew up in an age where often it was said, you can only be as happy as your saddest child.
I've heard that so many times. I
And
still
oh
hear
my
that.
word,
What a sad world.
what a sad world.
Right?
That means I can never be happy. Most of the time, not always, and knock on wood, right now, all of my kids are in a pretty good spot. But most of the time, one or more of my kids is struggling, and they're having their own really deep feelings and deep struggles. And if I were to hitch my wagon to that and could not be happier than that sad and struggling child, that's not helping me, and it's certainly not helping them. And it increases the risk that they start to take that belief that I need to make my mom better, that it's actually not okay for me to be sad because now my mother is struggling.
And then it becomes about you. We're now trying to fix mom and make her better versus actually the pain is within me, right? Versus mom.
For sure.
Mom's pain.
Now, let me clarify. It is okay to feel sadness along with our children. It's okay to, and very important to, empathize with and get curious about their emotions and be willing to sit with them and perhaps even feel with them, as long as we can maintain a sense of autonomy, that I can actually be okay even though my child is not okay.
That's so good. And how do you know when you cross that line? Like when it goes from empathy to I am feeling, it's affecting my happiness.
Yeah. That's a really good question. So just noticing, how am I doing at night? Am I able to sleep? Am I able to let my own body rest and my own mind rest? Or is it keeping me up in a way that now it's interrupting my well-being?
Such a good indicator, because I would say I can think in my own life when things have felt really stressful.
Yes.
And I wake up grinding my teeth or feeling short of breath and think, maybe I'm taking too much of that on.
For sure.
Yeah.
Noticing, how am I feeling first thing in the morning? Is that the first thing on my mind? Is it an immediate weight on my shoulders? Even before I've checked in with my own mind, my own heart, my own body.
Okay, so let's just talk about this. I know we still have one more to go through, but of the 4, how do you do that? Like really, how do you, because I think there's this really fine line of like, I'm surrendering.
Yeah.
And then I surrendering, right? I'm letting go. And then also it's like control. And where's that line?
Where's the line?
And I think that's so hard. Like, what part is mine and what makes me still an engaged mother?
Yeah.
But what part do I surrender?
Yeah.
I would love your thoughts on that.
So mentally and emotionally, I like to do a lot of visualization. So if I notice that I am feeling something that is weighing me down, that is burdensome, that is interrupting my ability to be in the present, to be with others who need me here in the moment that may not be this child, if it's interrupting my well-being, if I'm not feeling okay, I'll visualize myself taking that out from inside of me or even from on me. Sometimes it's literally on my shoulders. I can visualize it there. It sometimes is on my back. Sometimes I just feel it on my skin. Sometimes it's inside of me. I find where is that feeling of burden and heavy and not okay. And I'll visualize myself taking that out from inside of me and setting it next to me. Or sometimes I set it in front of me. And I just trust my brain and my body to let me know, where does it need to be? Does it want to sit next to me where I'm with it? I'm not ignoring it and I'm not disengaging from that child and their struggles. But suddenly it's not in me, it's next to me. And that helps me to then be next to my child.
Nice.
In
So
their
it's
struggle.
giving you some distance as opposed to it being
Yes.
your struggle.
Yes.
It's like you're with them.
I am with
It's
them.
like you're a Sherpa. You're helping them
There you go.
up the mountain.
Perfect.
But you're not
But I'm
carrying
not
them
carrying
on your back.
them.
Right?
Yep.
You're helping them with the load,
There you go.
but you're not carrying it for
That's
them.
a great way to think of it. I
Yeah.
love that idea.
Well, and I think we all need Sherpas at different times of our life. We need someone to help carry that load.
Yeah.
But by carrying, actually
Yeah.
carrying a person doesn't help them get through it, right?
Yeah.
I think resilience comes when they learn, okay, I've got to go up that mountain, but look at the support I have around me. I'm going to be okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That is healthy parenting, where we allow and give autonomy, but we give enough support.
Yes.
That is healthy parenting.
But that's hard.
So hard,
Right?
So hard. I also work on visualizing, trusting my child with that. And if it's okay, I'm going to borrow your metaphor.
Yeah.
If I can visualize myself then having this next to me or between me and my child, I can also visualize myself handing back to them what is theirs. The choice is theirs. The natural consequences of their choice is theirs. Their capacity to deal with and work through whatever the consequences, the great ones, the hard ones, is also theirs. And I can practice trusting them to carry that. And it helps me, again, to just visualize that. If I can hand that over and I can visualize my child standing up strong and holding it, that gives me some relief. They've got it.
I love that. Getting really clear about what is theirs and what you can help carry.
Yeah.
Right? I love that. And I love the visualization of just visualizing, okay, I'm going to give that. That's theirs. And that's okay. Right? In fact, they need that. That's how we learn. I mean, I think sometimes we forget that through the hard is when we really learn the most. Yeah. And if we try to take that from our children, then we're really not allowing them the growth that they need.
We're doing them a disservice.
Exactly. Sometimes we hate the idea of pain, but we are doing them a disservice.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, it's so challenging. All right. Give me your number 4.
Number 4, our job ultimately is love and boundaries. And part of the boundaries I'm going to throw in there is agency. They get to be that agent that acts to move and choose and get themselves up the mountain, so to speak. We also have an opportunity and the right to have our own boundaries. That loving our children doesn't mean that we allow whatever they choose to happen around us, in our home, with other children in our family. So to this mother that is wondering about this new in-law that's joining her family, she's got an opportunity and a right to figure out what are her boundaries. If there are things that are happening in that relationship that are unsafe, that are unacceptable, it's okay to identify that, acknowledge that, and get permission to speak to that. It's okay to offer feedback to our adult children when they are willing to hear it and when they'll listen to it, when they want that feedback. So asking permission, maybe saying, I've had something on my mind, or I've noticed something, or I have a concern about something. Would it be okay to share that with you? And when would be a good time to share that with you, if they agree? And then giving them the feedback, letting them see what we're experiencing. If I've got younger children that are still in the home that aren't yet adults, it's okay for me to speak for them as well in that relationship, particularly as it relates to safety and boundaries in the home. It's okay to share that feedback from a place of love, right? I have a concern. I'm worried about this. What are your thoughts on that? What's your plan here? It's okay to offer that when we've been given permission as parents. Now, again, then we're going to practice surrender. That even though we've given feedback doesn't mean that they're going to choose the thing that we see as helpful or needful in that situation.
And we have to be okay with that.
It gives us another opportunity to practice it. And it gives us a sense of safety, having a voice, that it is okay for me to speak up about this. And it is okay for me to have boundaries in my home, in my space, where as the adult, as the parent, I'm in charge of safety here.
Right. And again, that reminder of we can make a request, say this is what I'm requesting, and then they get to make a decision based on your request, and then you hold the boundary. This is what works for me and what doesn't, right? I think sometimes we get confused about how boundaries work, but when we can say, this is my request, we allow them to make the choice of honoring that request or not, and then we have a boundary. And then we get to say, I love what you said, is love and boundaries. I often think that, I think part of our problem is we don't stay boundaried. So then we get resentful and we get hateful.
Oh, and it's so hard to love in that space.
Oh, my word.
So hard to love in that space.
Right? But also it's hard to hold a boundary. And so what do? We're like, well, I want to love, but I also don't want to hold a boundary. So then I'm just in this swirling chaos. But I think that same thing, be boundaried. And I've heard it before. I've heard it said, be firm and loving. And I think that's the same thing. Be boundaried and loving. Just this is my line in the sand, and I continue to be loving. I also think that's not easy to do.
It's not.
Right?
It's not. And can we just validate that for a minute here?
Amen.
Let's go back to the grief.
Amen.
Full circle. It's not easy to do.
No.
It's not easy to do. Find somebody that you can talk to about this. Don't be alone in this. Because it is hard.
Right.
It is hard.
So hard. And you can sense the pain in this question. I can feel it. In fact, you and I both got a little teary.
Felt that tender grief.
So tender. And I just think, as a mom, you again, I think the dream, but you also recognize how this could change the dynamic of this woman's family.
For sure.
And that feels scary. And there's grief around that, right? I mean, there's so many layers of what could be the hard around this. It just makes so much sense. And again, recognizing there's very little control that this mother has over the situation. So hard. So at what point do you think, what does acceptance look like in a case like this? How, does acceptance look like, okay, I've got to love this new person coming into my family? Does acceptance look like, you know what, it's not my choice, but I'm gonna deal with it? I mean, what does, and again, acceptance, and I don't just mean acceptance, but how do we have peace around acceptance?
There you go. I think it's important to acknowledge that it's a process. It's not going to happen one and done. And it's going to be a process that will likely be ongoing for the duration of the relationship, of that extended family, and particularly as it grows, again, if there are more children that invite in-laws into the family, right? I think we find acceptance when we practice the letting go in whatever way we find works for us. Whether it's visualization, whether it's talking it out, writing it out, talking to a trusted other, we'll notice a sense of acceptance start to settle when we find that peace. And I believe that it starts to settle after we practice some of the tools. Sometimes we wait to feel peace before we surrender, or we wait to feel better, or we wait to have clarity before we take a healthy step or make a healthy choice or a helpful choice. Oftentimes we need to make that hard choice, practicing trusting ourselves, and then the peace settles. Oftentimes the power comes after the action.
I love that. The power comes after the action. We have to take those steps. And those steps sometimes feel uncertain. Often.
Almost all the time.
Right.
Certain. We are literally stepping into the dark. I don't know how this is going to feel. I don't know how I'm going to do this.
And trusting that it's like we don't know. And we don't know the outcome.
Yeah.
But we're going to take that action. We're going to take that step. Gosh, this is why I'm like, wow, parenting is not for the faint of heart. I mean, it is the most humbling thing, right? And I think there's times where you think, okay, you hear, oh, little kids, they're so much work. Oh, teenagers, they're the worst. They're so hard. I don't think they're the worst, but you hear this, right? And then now I'm like in this stage where I'm having young adults and people say, oh, just buckle up. Here this comes. And I think, oh my gosh.
It is hard. It is hard. I never say harder because I don't want to compare. It's all hard.
Right.
It's different hard.
Different hard.
And that also, there we go. There's another level of grief that something has changed. Totally. This is different. I don't recognize it. I don't know what to do with this. I felt like I was getting good at my old job. And now things have changed.
Isn't that the
something
truth?
To grieve. Something to grieve. Right? Would it be okay to talk about that for just a second?
Yes.
Like, how do we grieve?
Such a good, yes.
I love the idea of a dual model of grief, where sometimes maybe it's a day, maybe it's a moment, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a year. We're in a space of grief and loss, and that's what needs the attention. That's what needs the focus. Find your favorite way to grieve. Is it having a really good cry when you can? Is it, again, talking to somebody that you trust? Is it having a little later sleep in on a Saturday morning because you can and you just can't possibly get out of bed and you just need to sit with that grief? And
so
that
what you're
pain
saying is you decide. You
lean
get to decide.
into it and
Love
you
that.
decide your favorite ways to grieve. Now, it's good to find healthy enough ways to grieve, right? We don't want to do damage to ourselves and to others in our process of grief, but find something that honors the grief and allows you to sit with it for as long as you need to be there. And then just notice when the time starts to change, when the feeling and the focus starts to change back to a state of restoration rather than grief. Again, it might be a day. It may be just a moment of feeling some restoration. It might be a week. Over time, those restoration moments do happen a little more frequently. They last a little longer, and they happen a little more frequently. And it's okay to honor both places.
Yes.
And to acknowledge both places.
I think that is so important to honor both places, because I think sometimes when we are coming out of grief, we almost feel like, oh, wait, can I be feeling okay?
Exactly.
Is that even okay right now? Because look, this is still really hard and this is still a real loss. Can I be laughing and having fun even though this thing still exists? And what you're saying is both things can be true.
Both things can be true.
You can hold the grief and you can also hold the restoration.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Louise Tonkin, she is a grief expert. And she says that some people believe that grief gets smaller over time. She says, actually, the size of the grief stays the same, but over time, life grows up around it.
I love that visual. In fact, I've seen that before where it's at first when it's like there's a box and there's a big circle in the box and the circle represents grief. And it's like you're bumping up against it all the time. And eventually that box gets bigger. The grief still stays, but the box changes, right? So it's like our relationship with the grief changes. And that's important to honor, that it's never going to go away, but we change. Our box changes around the grief. Yeah. Such a good reminder. Well, Whitney, I really appreciate this conversation. Before we end, is there anything that you feel like was left unsaid that you want to speak to?
If I can just say one more time to that mom, I honor your grief. I honor your pain. I see it. I empathize with it. You're not alone. And you can do this. It's a hard thing. It's a changing season.
Geez, it makes me emotional hearing you say that, because I just think validating that pain of that mom, like it is hard and it is painful and it often feels very lonely. Mm-hmm. And it often feels like, again, what do? This is a child making a choice and you get to support it, right? But it doesn't mean that your feelings and your grief and your pain is not valid. It is valid. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
I love those reminders. Again, that what we can and can't control, getting really clear about that our children are not responsible for our happiness, that our empty feelings are not to be filled by our children. So good. And our job is love and boundaries. Such a good reminder and such a good way to remember that, again, whether it's this situation or so many others we face as parents, that those principles remain true, right? Wow, what a tender and layered topic. And one that I think I feel deeply as I am launching my own children, and just really appreciate your insights, Whitney, and appreciate recognizing that this is a grieving mother who I'm sure wants only the best for her child and is also in some pain herself. And so really appreciate that. Really appreciate you listeners tuning in. If this was helpful to you, please share it with a friend that you feel like could benefit. That's why we're here. We're here to help spread understanding, education about all the things that we go through, all the humanness that we are in, right? And until next time, take care.